Everyone.
Morning.
All right. So I want to do things just a little bit differently at first this morning. I'm sure we've got public speakers, but actually I'm going to start with my opening remarks, and then we will go to public speakers. And that is not because I want to hold anyone up, but just because, as we've talked about in the past, sometimes it's useful to provide some context before we go straight to public speakers. And I'll be brief. Good morning. I feel like it was a month of ups and downs, probably. Some significant ups for transit and the workforce. So first of all, congratulations on reaching the numbers on on-time performance. I know it has been a long slog, and congratulations, Andy, to you and to Sally and to the entire workforce and to others. It has been a long clawback, and we've got a long way to go, and we have to keep performing every single month. But congratulations to your team. Second, the way the workforce handled the Pride Parade and the Women's World Cup Parade, I thought was really well done, and everyone really stepped up when they needed to, and so I'm grateful, and I know the city's grateful, and those are tough. Those are tough things to staff, particularly when they're last minute, but worth it and wonderful, and so congratulations on that. Obviously, we also had some tough moments this month, and Andy, I think what might be most useful is if we can go through a couple of those highlights, if you can provide a quick update on where we are on those incidents, and then we can kind of go from there, because again, I think it gives people an update on where things stand at the moment. So as I see them, we've got the sort of what I call obviously the sort of signal slash electric failures or power failures from both July 6th and then this this past Friday. And then there was the blackout of not this past weekend, but the weekend before, so the weekend of the 13th. There was the flooding incidents that have happened in the last several days. There have been, and the falling debris issues, which I would like to go over. We can take it in any order that you like. Obviously, not all of these our blame does not go to the MTA, but responsibility tends to fall on the MTA. Last time I checked, we did not control the weather, but we also can't control everything that happens next door to one of our stations, but we can control what happens inside our station. So if that makes sense to you, Andy, I would love a quick update on where investigations stand, where processes stand, and then we can go from there. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, board members and customers, members of the public and the media. First up, thank you for your kind comments about the things that have gone well. A lot have. I don't want to steal Sally's thunder, so Sally will talk about how we've achieved this high since 2013 of 81.5% on-time performance, which we're very proud of. Secondly, I'd just like to reiterate and reinforce what you said, Chair, about the way that transit staff have risen to a number of challenges recently. So let's deal with what you might call the more positive ones first of all. The parade, the Pride Parade. I'm so proud of the way the team executed that. These things don't just come about. We put extensive planning, more than a year's planning, into executing World Pride. Obviously, we're used to dealing with the annual Pride event, but this was huge. This had 3 million extra people using the system, and it went flawlessly. The staff were great. Everyone had a good time. We looked after people. We got them to the event, and we got them home, which is at the end of the day what it's all about. So massive shout out to everyone involved: the operators, the planners, the command and control team at the RCC. Everyone did a really good job for World Pride. Secondly, as you said, the parade that we had downstairs, that was not, we didn't know that was happening. It's great that the US won the Soccer World Cup, even though they beat England in the semi-final, but we won't mention that. Again, that went really well. I was really pleased with that. And then just a final positive shout out. At the end of the day, we have faced a challenge, same as New York City, over the last few days because of this incredibly high heat. And notwithstanding the incidents, We had work going on the weekend. We were responding to incidents, but we also had critical signal work going on Queens Boulevard, and also people working literally in subterranean substations trying to fix some of the problems. And you wouldn't have wanted to be there. It was so hot. It was unbelievable. But as ever, transit staff kept their cool. They did the job. They did what they are there to do. And I'm very proud of them. So let's go on then to the points that you made. First up, I'll deal with some of the more self-contained ones quickly, and then I will get on to the blackout and you made reference to signals and power. These were what are called ATS failures, okay, automatic train supervision. So let's deal with the flood first of all. This was at Court Square. A number of you will have seen. I certainly saw the customer video that was sent in, which was quite shocking actually, where with no notice, a hoarding, a properly constructed but hoarding nonetheless, a hoarding gave way, and a deluge, almost a tsunami of water came through that hoarding that was protecting a developer's work site, a third-party developer, not on a transit job. There's a transit element in putting in a elevator, but that hoarding had been put up to protect a work site while they built this skyscraper. And obviously we knew that flooding was possible. We knew that there was a big deluge on its way, so we did what we normally do across the system, and we protected the service against that. What it now transpires is that developer, unbeknownst to us, had removed a pump from the big pit that they were building as part of that construction. For some apparently inexplicable reason, they removed the pump from that pit, which meant that the pit filled up with water. The water eventually, the pressure of that water overwhelmed the hoarding that was there to protect the work site. That's why the hoarding gave way and that deluge of water came into our station and actually swept a customer off their feet. We were very lucky. He was incredibly lucky, and obviously we're pretty furious about that. Now, the good news is that deluge of water immediately dissipated because our drains are clear and the drains got rid of the water, so that was good. But the fact that it happened in the first place is not, so we have asked, Chair Foy asked for the AG, the Auditor General, sorry, the Attorney General, I always get that wrong, the Attorney General, Tish James, to investigate the actions of that contractor, and at their cost, we are superimposing additional supervision at that site. There's no reason why we should pay for it, or the taxpayers, they can pay for it. So that's what happened at Court Square. So I'm going to rattle through the others quickly in the interest of time. We did have challenges on the Rockaways over the weekend. We lost power through the PSEG power feed. That was a challenging incident because there's a lot of people down on the beach that day. We had to progressively restore the power to both branches. We got the A service restored first. The shuttle proved more challenging for a number of reasons. Craig and his team stepped up, which is, of course, the advantage of a unified transit system, in that the buses under my control, we immediately got as many buses as we could muster to a difficult location and progressively restored the service to get people back from the beach. Then the blackout, the major blackout, which was a Con Ed blackout, that was on the 13th, as you mentioned. We had just under 3,000 people on trains between stations. So in any incident, big incident, and we know what to do in these instances, to me there are always three phases. There's the rescue phase, there is the recovery phase, and the resumption phase. It's 3 Rs. So the first job is to rescue people. So we quickly ascertained where these trapped trains were. A number of them were in tunnels, but we had around just under 3,000 people to evacuate. That was absolutely job one. In parallel with evacuating people from darkened stations, the stations went to emergency lighting, and we had to evacuate those stations. In parallel with also ascertaining where there were elevator entrapments. As it happened, there was only one, that was at 34th Street, Hudson Yard, and there were 5 people in that, FDNY, and our forces got those people out. So the first phase, rescue, everyone out, identify where trains are. We then move to the recovery phase, which is already starting to think about how can we, working with Con Ed, working with what we know we've got, how do we move generators, resources, plant, equipment, supplies, how do we quickly check to see what's working, what's not working, is there any water on the track because pumps may have failed because of the power going off. So we were in the next phase, which is very much checking the status of the asset. We also ran light trains, in other words, trains without customers on, to check the track and check the signal sequences and check that signals weren't what we call hooked, so that we could get ready for resumption. And then we've, on a phased basis, resumed that service. The last item to go in was the Times Square shuttle. Sorry, not the Times Square shuttle. It was 7 line between 34th Street, Hudson Yard and Times Square. So that was the last piece to go in. And at that point, we stood down the command and control arrangement. Both Ronnie Hakem and I were in the rail control center throughout. So now we move to the 2 ATS issues that we've faced. First point to note is that they are entirely separate. They are not linked. So I'll deal with the one on July the 6th first. That did impact what's called ATS, which is automatic train supervision. What ATS does is it's the means by which we know on the A division, there's 2 divisions on the New York subway, the A division and the B division. The A division, commonly known as the IRT, are the numbered lines. The B division are the lettered lines. So on the A division, there's a more modern system, it's called ATS. So what that does is enable the rail control center to see on big visual diagrams in the theater, the operating theater, they can see the status of the signals and they can see the status of switches, both of which obviously are key to the safe passage of trains. That's why you have signals and switches. So in both cases, it wasn't that the signals failed, the signals were working, but we could not see where the trains were. And before you resume service, it's critical that you know where trains are and you know what their identities are, particularly where you've got merges and where you've got interlockings, because you want to make sure that you get what are called the lineups right. So on July 6th, that was a shorter failure. That was the ATS failed. For some reason it failed, but we now know what that was. There was one piece of code in what you can imagine for a signaling system, millions, literally millions of lines of code. And when we did the downloads and we went through the logs with our supplier, one digit, one illegal character, for whatever reason, caused that that caused an illogical command to be given. That's what caused that incident on July 6th. So then we moved to July 19th. This is last Friday.
Sorry, Andy, can I interrupt for one
Yeah,
second?
most certainly.
The code issue was on the supplier side or on our side?
I believe that was Sally. It was on the supplier side, right? So obviously we're talking to our suppliers about how that rogue one digit, just one digit, how that got in there. That did cause both the primary and the backup to be confused. So effectively what we had to do, same as the second incident, was reboot the systems in order that we could get up and running again. So July 6th, headline, we know what it was. A patch has now been applied. That won't happen again because that rogue digit has been removed. So July the 14th, July the, whatever it was, 19th, Friday. This was around 5:50 p.m. We were building for what looked like was going to be a very good peak. Everything was looking good. We're all sitting pretty. The lines are working well. And I happened to be just downstairs at Brooklyn, at Bowling Green. And you develop a sixth sense for trouble. And sure enough, you could see on the platform opposite, on the Brooklyn-bound platform, a train was sitting there. The conductor was making announcements, nothing moving, nothing on the board on the uptown. So straight onto the RCC and to you, Sally, and we realized immediately what had happened. The ATS had gone down for the A division. That meant that lines 1 through 6 and the Times Square shuttle, once again, the RCC could not see where those trains were and did not know what their identities were. So it could not have happened at a worse time. You're at their evening peak, it's boiling hot, people want to go home, they're frustrated. This was obviously clearly a major incident. So again, command and control swings in. We knew we had to identify where those trains were. We knew we needed to figure out a way to get that system up and running again as quickly as possible. So Sally and I were upstairs in our office, and Frank Giesecke, our COO, we were fully all over this because we knew that this would be a big incident. What we do know what happened then is we had a number of trapped trains. So we had 27 trains to deal with. 5 of them were in tunnels. A number of them were on express lines. Initially, we sent our personnel to backup locations. They go to what are called towers. The regular, this kind of the old-fashioned way of running a subway, but it's a genuine backup arrangement. You send people to the towers. But what saved us, actually, we rebooted the servers that had gone down, and a number of servers had gone down. So obviously, job one is to get the service up and running again. That took around 90 minutes. We got the service running again. In the meantime, we had explained to people their best bet was to go over to the B division to use the lettered lines and or to use the buses, where once again the buses came to the rescue. So we got the service rebooted, and our focus then turns to finding out what caused the problem. So we have determined the reason that the ATS service failed. This was due to a software bug, not the same as I talked about before. So we're not talking about an erroneous single-digit piece of code. This was a software bug, and because that bug, it now becomes apparent, was also in our backup servers. That's why they went down as well. And that bug automatically powered down our servers without notice. So the RCC did not know that was going to happen. The servers shut down. And as I've described, the key issue was then to get the service up and running. We rebooted the servers. So what are we doing now? We're looking with IT. We've got, and I think our head of IT is here in case there's any particular technical questions, Mike Moran. We're identifying any other areas where there may be a similar problem. And of course, one of the problems with bugs is you don't know that you have a bug until the bug manifests itself. But we're taking steps not only to locate any other circumstances, but also to upgrade the system and minimize the chance that customers would once again lose the reliable service to which they're entitled. So again, I want to reiterate, those two issues were separate, but they affected the same system, namely the ATS system. Now, we have been asked, a number of media have asked about a software upgrade that happened last December. It was just that. It was an upgrade that is part of our modernization efforts and our modernization plan to minimize disruptions. But in closing, Chair, and then obviously technical questions are more than welcome. Look, at the bottom line is we gave people a pretty horrendous journey on Friday night. I feel really badly about that. That is contrary to the success we have had in recent months. But I have a saying in subways, you're only as good as your last peak. And we did not serve the people of New York well on Friday evening. I apologize for that. I feel badly about that. And that's why we put so much effort into quickly finding out what was the root cause, and we now know it.
Okay, thank you. So the issue from Friday night, the software glitch, also on the supplier side, or was that an issue on MTA side? Do we know yet?
We know. We know where that bug resided. I'm not going to say any more about the bug and where exactly it was because of the security concerns about the fact that it actually controls our signaling system or our ATS system. So if board members want to know more, my advice, Chair, is we should go in executive session for that. But we do know where it was, and we know how to fix it.
Okay, so perhaps we can have the rest of that conversation in executive session. I don't want to go into executive session now because I know the public's waiting, but I want to make sure that people have an opportunity to. Commissioner Schwartz, did you have a question?
Yes, I just want to ask President Byford a couple of questions regarding this incident that occurred on Friday. One is, I think it would be important that in addition to our own IT department, that we have some outside expertise. When you mention the word bug, I want to make sure that, and with law enforcement as well, that one, was this a criminal activity that took place? Two, is that if it was a supplier screw up, I think we need to understand that. Three, I just want to, I think we need outside expertise. I'm not sure whether or not we have the internal expertise to determine how to prevent future viruses or bugs possibly from invading the system. So I think we need all hands on deck to get to the root cause. The other thing, Andy, And I just want to ask you this question. There was an article that appeared this morning it's called The City. I'm not a regular reader of The City. Wouldn't even venture to say whether or not it's a legitimate newspaper and whether or not the person that wrote the article, there's any credibility, reality to it. But the article stated, and this is why I bring it up, and I'm asking you this question. I'm not accusing anyone of anything, but in this article it said there's been persistent problems with ATS, stating back from March. There's been a number of reports issued, and if there's accuracy to that at all, my first question is, one, were those reports brought up the chain of command to your attention? And if those reports did occur, dating back as early as March of this year, that there were issues or persistent problems with ATS and you weren't made aware of it, then I think it warrants us to ask the Inspector General to get involved and investigate this as well and find out also from that office's perspective is what's going on. But I wanted to, one, say we just need as many hands-on to look at this problem and issue so it doesn't occur again, and we have all the firewalls and backup systems so it doesn't occur. But also, I'm just reacting to this story I saw this morning, and I just wanted to ask you whether or not, from your perspective, is there any truth or credibility that there have been persistent problems, and were they brought to your attention?
Okay, thank you for the question. First up, I'll deal with the opening comments you made. There is we understand what this issue is. When, without, again, going into too much detail, there's no suspicion that this was either a virus, and there's definitely no suspicion or concern that this was in any way a law enforcement issue, a terrorist issue, some sort of hacking or a cyber attack. That's absolutely not the case. And it was our IT people working with the supplier who figured out what it was. I haven't read the article. So you have me at a disadvantage. I have not read that article this morning. I try not to be I like to deal with facts, so the fact that there's a newspaper article would not lead me to a conclusion. But what I can say is, have there been problems with ATS? We have on occasions had problems with ATS, but nothing of this magnitude. So do I know about them? Yes, because as you would want me to be, Commissioner, I'm all over the detail. And I know minute by minute what's going on this transit system, as you would expect. So yes, there have been a number of what I would call fairly run-of-the-mill incidents with ATS, and in each case we've resolved them.
One thing I would like, and I'm sorry, Commissioner Albert, I'll come right to you. I have not significant amounts of tech experience, but some amounts of experience in the tech industry, and things often go completely wrong because of just one tiny piece of code. Which is why companies are supposed to check and recheck and have multiple people reading every single piece of code, every single line of code, testing, retesting, and checking for glitches all the time. Because this is a perfect example of when one little thing goes wrong, you tie up an entire system, or an entire airline loses the ability to get people onto planes and to safely land planes. And so apart from this committee hearing, I would love to follow up with you with the supplier so that we can understand whether it's Oracle, whether it, whoever it is, that we are having conversations with them about how we're going to hold them accountable. I understand mistakes happen, but when they make mistakes like this, when they have issues with their code, it shuts the system down and it costs enormous amounts of money. So we'll follow up with them. So let's go to Commissioner Albert and then Commissioner Lacewell. And just a reminder that I had us do this at the beginning so that we could give the public updates, but we do want to make sure that we go to our public comments because I don't want to keep people waiting for too long. Commissioner Albert.
Andy, thank you for your explanations for these events. On the issue of the Con Edison blackout, years ago I seem to recall that MTA has New York Power Authority power as backup power. Is there a reason that did not kick in this episode? Or do we not still have NYPA power?
So we had traction current. This wasn't the blackout that occurred didn't impact the traction current. And at one point I didn't mention was Sally, Frank, and I always have the same first question in any power incident: is the traction current on? Why do you want to know that? Because you want to know, do trains have light and do they have aircon? And so we didn't lose the traction current. What we lost was
Signals.
signals, and also stations were plunged into darkness. So we are obviously we're reviewing the whole way that our system worked, but the stations have different. Based upon the vintage of the stations, some have more comprehensive backup than others. In terms of what's called a UPS, which is an uninterruptible power supply in a number of modern locations. Others go default to emergency lighting to enable you to come out.
But on the issue of the signals, you don't know that we have NYPA backup power for them.
I don't believe we do. Frank, no, we don't, right? No.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm requesting an executive session briefing on our cybersecurity across the board with whoever the relevant people are. Obviously, it doesn't have to be today, whether it's through the main board or whatever you think is appropriate. I'm sure everybody did whatever they could once the problem hit, but as you noted, we own our own cybersecurity, and it behooves us to make sure whatever outside experts, which may be already in place, are checking the system across the board and that we have best practices. Thank you.
Right, Commissioner Swartz.
Yeah, I am just going on record that I would like the Inspector General's office to be involved in this investigation in dealing with the supplier to look into finding what the problems are and making sure that we, with New York City Transit and the Inspector General's office, understand what happened and what the solution is so it doesn't happen again.
Okay, so with that, let's go to, and we actually didn't even get to debris, which we will get to later, because I don't want to take any more time away from public speakers. So that'll be it for my opening statement, and let's go to public speakers. Are there any public speakers? I am sure there are.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There are 23 members of the public registered to speak today. Speakers, I'd like to remind you that in the interest of time and fairness to all, we limit everyone to 2 minutes. Please be aware of the clock in the front of the room and the warning light you will see reminding you that you have 30 seconds left to conclude your remarks. The first speaker is Assemblymember Eichenstein, followed by Robert Gottheim. Robert Gottheim.
Good morning, board members. My name is Robert Gottheim. I'm here on behalf of Congressman Nadler. We are actually doing a joint statement between Assemblyman Eichenstein, who was here, and City Councilman Kalman Yeager, who is also speaking. Council member, did you want to come up with me at the same time? The council member was going to read our statement, and then we were each going to have one. Okay, sure. Okay. Thank you very much. I'm going to read a very short statement. This is a statement from these 3 elected officials. The reintroduction of the express service during the morning, this is regarding the F-train service. The reintroduction of express F-train service during the morning and evening rush hours on the F-line is a good step in the right direction. The service change will be a net gain to many who travel along the F-line, including it will include reduced travel time for commuters. Together, we will continue to work with the MTA and advocate for increased express service on the F-line and better transportation options across Brooklyn and New York City. And if I could add, and then others, this is a step in the right direction. We are certainly not getting what all people who represent Southern Brooklyn. The congressman represents an area of Bensonhurst and Borough Park. It is taking 4 F trains and converting them into express service. It is going to make the commute better for people who are further south in Brooklyn. It certainly doesn't help everybody. What certainly would be better is if we have the express F-track service gets repaired, and that would get into service. That would help more. But this is a step in the right direction, and we applaud the MTA for doing it. They should do more. But we are encouraged by this initial step, something that elected officials in Southern Brooklyn and Borough Park and Bensonhurst have been asking for a very long time. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. The next speaker will be Jason Pinheiro, followed by Councilmember Lander.
Good morning. I was coming from my work in Staten Island on July 13th, getting off the Staten Island ferry, going to Bowling Green to take the 4 train, and noticing through the PA that the 4 train was not running between Bowling Green and Brooklyn due to a stalled train in the Joalman tube. Then I had to rush out of the station and walk to Whitehall Street, and then take the R train to J Street Metrotech. When I get off at J Street Metrotech, I see a bunch of people, the platform so full that even the line got to the stairwell in the mezzanine area, almost getting to the fare control area with no platform controllers whatsoever. I want to thank Sarah and her team of keeping us updated, but like I mentioned in the joint commuter rail, there has to be more inter-agency communication between all agencies when things like this happen. Because what if a person depends on the subway but has a commuter rail? Could that person use a Metro card in the commuter rail to be cross-honored? That was a good question that some folks had, but at least we're back online. And kudos to Alice Gooden that came up in the top 40 on the 40 on this week's
Please
edition of
conclude
the
your remarks.
City and State. So that's all I have to say.
The next speaker is Councilmember Lander, followed by Matt Camper.
President Byford, members of the board, thanks for this opportunity to testify. I'm New York City Councilmember Brad Lander. I'm a strong supporter of Fast Forward, of congestion pricing, and of your leadership, and I appreciate your keeping your eyes on the prize. But for today, I'm here representing thousands of strap hangers with signatures I have at the 6 local F stations who you are proposing to cut service for, to plead with you to reject today's proposal. We would be delighted to see a real F Express train, which would add service to the line in order to shorten travel times for Southern Brooklyn riders, who we also care about, without reducing service for thousands of other riders. But the current proposal adds no train service whatsoever. It simply eliminates service during rush hour at 6 local stations, some of the busiest and most used ones on the line, stations that already experience severe overcrowding. According to the MTA's own 2016 report on this proposal, it harms more people than it helps, 52% to 48%. Your press release laughably overstates the benefits. You have to be like a lottery winner, more than a lottery winner, to get the benefits that the proposal says. You won't even really know which days you'll be able to save the up to 6 minutes. And the harm to local riders is actually dramatically understated as well. Think about someone coming from Red Hook who has already a long walk or bus ride or bike ride, who misses a train. Now, instead of waiting 3-4 minutes for the next one, 7-8 minutes for the next one. That's That's not catastrophic, but why do it just in the name of a proposal that polarizes riders against each other? Your report also acknowledges significant crowding at the station at Bergen Street unless improvements are made, which are not in the current capital plan. The process here has not provided adequate information or community conversation. So we urge you to reject this proposal. In my written testimony, if you still go ahead and move forward with it, we ask 3 things that you very seriously consider. 1, commit in your vote no additional elimination of local service beyond these 4 trains. Riders are terrified. Sometimes the trains go express rogue. Please commit in the vote. You will not take away any more trains from the thousands of local riders at these 6 busiest stations. 2, address growing service needs in Gowanus. The B71 bus was eliminated from these very same public transit users. The communities are growing. We need your help. And 3, accelerate signal modernization on the F line. It is deep down in the fast forward schedule, not expecting to see any benefits in the near future. Let's accelerate signal modernization for the F and for all riders. We don't have to polarize riders against each other. We can improve service for all of them. Thank you. And here's the 600 plus people who agree.
The next speaker is Matt Camper, followed by Assemblymember Eichenstein.
Good morning, members of the New York City Transit and Bus Committee. My name is Matt Camper, and I am an advocate for the MTA. I'm here to address this morning about the F Train Express service. So basically, from what I read, is that 2 trains in the morning and 2 trains in the afternoon will be converted from a local train to an express train, which will impact a lot of people in the areas of Brooklyn, which I am very concerned about. You know, the 6 and the 7 trains, which are, of course, in Queens, and as well on the Flushing line, along with the 6 in the Bronx. They are express service, which, from what I've seen, every other train is local and every other train is express. And I don't understand. I understand maybe you guys are going to have to adjust the M trains because they run with the F in Manhattan local. Also, the E runs on the Queens Boulevard line along with the F. There maybe have to be adjustments. I completely understand that, and it could take some time. But why don't you guys, to help, not just, it will be a win-win for everyone. Everyone will keep their local service, and people who want to get to something in Brooklyn can have their express service. Why don't you guys just take a look and see if there is a way you can have that happen, like on the 6 and like on the 7, so that way everybody can have a better ride, and that way nobody loses service out of this, because it's very important you don't lose service in these situations. And I don't think it's fair that people are have to lose their service and then causes more overcrowded trains, which is not what people want. You want to, especially with the heat this past weekend, more overcrowded trains means it's going to be hotter, which is not a good thing for anyone. So please take a look and see if you can have it like the 6 and the 7. And thank you so much.
The next speaker is Assemblymember Eichenstein, followed by Lisa Daglian.
Good morning, and hello. Yeah. Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity for me to speak today. I'm Assemblymember Simca Eichenstein, representing the 48th Assembly District, encompassing Borough Park and Midwood. I'm here today to speak on the restoration of the F-Train Express service. In my eyes, this is a great first step in the right direction that will hopefully be followed by additional actions that will further continue to reduce commuters' travel time throughout the system. One thing that everyone in this room can agree on, the MTA is absolutely crucial to the operations of this city. On those extremely rare occasions where the subways stop running, the city largely stops running too. The F-Train service serves countless of New Yorkers, many of whom are my constituents, who rely upon the F line as that is the only subway line near their homes. Decreasing times is a key metric for the success of the transit system. Express F-Train service is one way to help reduce the daily commute for thousands of New Yorkers. In an ideal world, there would be express F train service throughout the day, or at a minimum throughout peak hours and across the entire line. I understand that this is just a first step, and I look forward to the day that a fully functioning F Express train is the reality. In conclusion, there's no South Brooklyn versus North Brooklyn. We are all Brooklynites. If my fellow Brooklynite who lives in southern part of Brooklyn has a commute of over an hour to reach the borough of Manhattan, wouldn't we look out for our fellow neighbors? We should absolutely give them the opportunity to shave off significant time from their long daily commute. To me, this is a no-brainer. Thank you.
The next speaker is Lisa Daglian, followed by Assemblymember Simon.
Good morning. My name is Lisa Daglian. I'm the Executive Director of the Permanent Citizens Advisory Committee to the MTA, PCAC, speaking today on behalf of the New York City Transit Riders Council. Riders have been pushed to the max this summer, and we know that you have too. The July 13th blackout showed that some system redundancies worked, as the underground stations and third rail remained by and large operational. The problem was the signals. We and all subway riders need to know that the system will work in times of emergency. Where was the signal redundancy and backup power? We know that you're looking into that. The meltdown on Friday was attributable to ATS problems, and while it's a different calamity, it also begs the question of where is the system redundancy? Sending staff to towers to direct traffic should not be the only backup plan. We have full faith and confidence in the very impressive transit team, but these incidents demonstrate the critical need for significant investment in a modern signal system, including significant increases in CBTC installation. Work has already begun on signal modernization under the Subway Action Plan and initial phases of Fast Forward, but more is needed. A focused and accelerated effort that will need focused and dedicated funding for the entire system, including signal maintenance, upgrades, and modernization. This funding must be included in the next capital plan, but we can't wait. We urge that as you look at the root causes of these incidents, you develop a targeted plan and immediately identify funding to modernize the signals as envisioned in Fast Forward in the 100-plus-year-old subway system that millions of people rely on every day. You know, as we do, the riders can't go through another day like Friday. Thank you.
The next speaker is Assemblymember Simon, followed by Finley Stout.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate this opportunity to testify. I want to say that Councilmember Lander said many of the things that I would say to you today. In 2016, there was a report which purported to have an F Express that would actually cut the service in the northernmost stations, which carry the greatest volumes, by about 50%, which I affectionately refer to as the F non-express. And this proposal is not quite as extreme as that proposal, so I do recognize there has been work on that, but it still compromises the commuting times and conditions of 52% of the riders along the F train line. And so there are 4 stations, 4th and 9th, Smith and 9th, which is the tallest station that the MTA refused to make accessible a few years ago when it revamped it entirely, Carroll Street and Bergen Street. So getting on those trains now is next to impossible. It will be even more difficult if we are skipping 2 trains in the morning going in and 2 trains coming out in the afternoon. I think it's very important that, or I'm very concerned that we were not informed of this beforehand. When we originally met about in 2016, we were told we would be able to have some additional dialogue. That dialogue never occurred. We tried to have meetings with the community and the MTA, and those efforts were rejected. And so now when this proposal comes out, again, we didn't have any advance notice. We're not able to speak to our constituents about it. And I just want to say that I think that is really a problem. I would like to have greater transparency. I would like to have that communication from the MTA MTA, even if you're coming out with a proposal that you know we're going to hate, I'd like to know about it. And I would like to reiterate everybody's call that we should be adding service, not reducing service anywhere in the system. And we have an extra set of train tracks below Bergen Street, for example, that we don't use. I hear various reasons as to why they're inoperable. I would like to get a real answer as to why they're inoperable, and to encourage you to explore ways that we can use those tracks for F Express. Thank you.
The next speaker is Finley Staub, followed by Shoal Picker.
Good morning, MTA. My name is Finley Staub, and I am a commuter on the R, 4, 5, 2, 3, F, and G lines. I think what I'm about to say is what you said today, Andy. I want to first say that I am surprised at how the blackout in Lower Manhattan affected subway service on subway lines on the system, notably E-trains being rerouted via the 4th Avenue and West End lines in Brooklyn, when they were supposed to run to Whitehall Street via the R line, and most 1 and 6 line stations in Manhattan being completely enveloped in darkness, and trains on these two lines had to bypass stations. I also want to point out my shirt that I'm wearing today. This was notably the only lettered line that was affected by the networking communication issues earlier last week, on Friday. From this, the MTA were completely in the blind. They didn't know where trains were in tunnels. However, commuters were trapped on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and Grand Central shuttle train lines without AC or even announcements from train crews, and this is what I've seen on Twitter. Most of these commuters were trapped on trains for between 1 to 3 hours. From this, I would like to request that the MTA has train crews stay open with their commuters and give updates on issues happening on lines, and for the MTA to give weekly updates to the commuters on how they're taking action against these issues and solve them. Thank you for allowing me to speak this month, and have a great August recess.
The next speaker is Shoal Picker, followed by Cleo Markman on behalf of Congressmember Rose.
Dear President Byford and members of the board, my name is Shoal Picker, and I'm a member of Access, which stands for Accessing Currently Closed Entrances to Subway Stations. It is a 4-year-old mobility rights and spatial justice working organizing group concerned with addressing limitations to physical mobility to, from, and within New York City's subway network. We advocate for reopening hundreds of closed subway station access points, such as staircases, easements, and entrances, the construction of new access points at subway stations, redesigning stations to improve circulation, the expansion of ADA accessibility throughout the system, and free public transportation at the point of use. Between the 1970s and 90s, hundreds of entrances were closed across the system to reduce costs, and in some cases due to concerns about crime. While there were legitimate concerns about criminal activity in and around subway stations, closing access points has never been proven to reduce crime. It has proven to lead to increased commute times. Since then, ridership across the system has gone up substantially, and crime is at record lows in the city. However, the MTA has never gone back to see whether it makes sense to reopen some entrances. Closing entrances has increased commute times, diminished economic opportunity, constrained economic development, deactivated public space, imperiled public safety, and has diminished street safety. Reopening entrances would be a relatively cheap way to dramatically improve access to subway stations and improve the commutes of New Yorkers across the city. Permanently slabbing over the entrance at Broad Street would make it almost impossible to reopen them if needed in a few years or decades, and would save little money. The New York Stock Exchange requested the change to make streetscape improvements, which would reconfigure its security infrastructure, a permanent change. It would require additional construction to reopen these entrances if need be. In addition, in the staff summary, it states that the stairs could be reopened after refurbishment if the security zone is removed. There are dozens of places across the system where entrances should be reopened but would be hard to do because the MTA slabbed entrances or removed mezzanines. For instance, at stations along the J in Queens, such as 75th, 85th, and 104th Streets, mezzanines were removed entirely. These mezzanines provide additional access points to the street. The changes were made due to vandalism and crime concerns. The MTA elected to close them to reduce maintenance
Please
costs.
conclude your remarks.
Now it will cost many times as much to reopen this entrance. I urge President Byford and the board to reconsider slabbing over the exits at Broad Street.
Please conclude
and
your
ask
remarks.
to do a system-wide study of closed entrances to see which ones could be reopened. Thank you.
The next speaker is Cleo Markman, followed by Councilmember Yeager.
Good morning. We're very appreciative of the steps taken by the MTA to improve the commute for South Brooklyn residents. We have and will continue to support F-Express efforts. The citizens we represent have some of the longest commutes in the entire country. This is a common sense decision. It's also important for us not to view this as a false choice, where someone's transit improvements come at the expense of others. We urge MTA to continue to develop innovative solutions, not just for the F train, but for all mass transit options in our city. Thank you very much.
The next speaker is Councilmember Yeager, followed by Councilmember Traeger.
Thank you. Councilman Traeger and I plan it like that. Good morning, Mr. President, members of the board. Thank you for giving me the time to be here. Mr. President, it's good to see you again. I agree with my colleagues who are on the other side of this issue. I, too, don't want to see any service reduced. But what we're talking about here is not letting the imperfect be the enemy of the greatest that we can possibly get. We're asking some people in New York City to wait on a platform for approximately a minute more, those who live closest to Manhattan, in exchange for which those who live further away will see their commutes be reduced by 20 to 30 minutes. Nobody is going to be on a subway car for even one more minute, not a single person. Not a single person will sit on a hot subway car for one more minute. Not a single person will see their commute lengthened by a single second. They will simply have to wait for 1 to 2 more minutes for a subway car. We're talking about polarizing. I view polarizing as this conversation, a debate about whether or not some in New York City can give 1 or 2 minutes extra on the platform in exchange for others to have a commute speeded up by 20 to 30 minutes. And I want to be clear what this means. A lengthier commute being reduced for some people who have a commute of 45 minutes, an hour and 15 minutes, an hour and a half, dropping it by 20 to 30 minutes. Some people sitting on a train station in the areas closest to Manhattan where their commute takes them probably 20 minutes, they wait an extra minute for a subway. They won't really be waiting because the subway's still going to come. They could just time themselves a little differently. I'm very, very grateful, Mr. President, to your leadership, to the leadership of the MTA for bringing this service. I do want to urge you, as my colleague in the council and as Assemblywoman Simon mentioned, bring more express service if you can. But I understand that there are limitations in your abilities to do that. And so we'll take what we can get. And I'm very grateful for that. Thank you.
The next speaker is Councilmember Traeger, followed by Murray Bowden.
Good morning. I am Councilman Traeger from Coney Island, Brooklyn. Thank you, President Byford, the committee and the board. For those of you who know me, I don't need scripted remarks. I speak very candidly from the heart, as always, and I will do so again today. I, first of all, do not like the idea of neighborhoods being pit against each other. Every neighborhood in New York City and in Brooklyn deserves good, reliable transportation. So I want to begin by saying that. But I want to paint the picture here first for folks in southern Brooklyn. When there are signal delays, which there are many, it disproportionately impacts the outer boroughs. I refer to Coney Island as the outer borough. We're far out there. I want to paint the picture of the average commute of a community leader who I know who lives in Coney Island and works here in Lower Manhattan, lives in Coney Island houses, NYCHT, by West 33rd. And she has to take a bus along Surf Avenue because folks forget the majority of folks in Coney Island do not live by Nathan's. They don't live in the Wonder Wheel. They live in the West End of Coney Island. That's where the majority of our folks live. Working class people who have to get to school, to work, to get to their appointments. So she takes a bus from Surf in the West 30s down to the Stillwell train station, which could take, these days with construction in Coney Island, 15, 20, even more minutes. Then has to hop on the train for a 50-minute to an hour commute, and that is if there are no delays. So when I hear other parts of the city complain about commutes that are dragging out to an hour and a half or more, that's daily life for residents in the West End of Coney Island. Hour and a half commutes. It's outrageous, and it disproportionately impacts the working class people, the seniors, children, students having to get to school. So the F Express is something that we used to have, and we should have it back. But I agree with my colleagues, we need more service in general, and I'm all for that. I support any effort to increase funds, permanent funds, to the MTA to make our transit system and our bus system better and more reliable for every part of the city. But I will be unapologetic for my part of town that has sustained cuts historically when we're seeing development in southern Brooklyn on the rise. No community should have to deal with an hour-and-a-half plus commute to get to school, to get to work, or get to a doctor's appointment. So I am in favor of restoring a more permanent F Express in addition to more service in general in Brooklyn and New York City. And I thank you for your time here this morning.
The next speaker is Murray Bowden, followed by Ellen Shannon.
Flexibility. We have to learn how to think more flexibly and do things more flexibly, which is what you did this morning, Sarah. You changed the order of the meeting correctly so that we had information that we needed to be able to present now. People talk about what happened 20 years ago, what happened 2 years ago. This is not the same MTA that it was 2 years ago. I've been coming here since Virgil Conway was chair. 20 years. I've been speaking for 20 years here. This is not the same MTA as before. Andy is doing a phenomenal job. He's got Alex over there. This never happened before. And sure, there are mistakes, but they're being corrected as quickly as possible. Jason wanted to know why I'm here. I said I was going to retire. It's not really that I'm retiring. I'm just changing the way I do things. I provide information. It is your responsibility, this committee, this board, to implement them. And when members of the staff ignore the law as currently written, it is this committee and the board's responsibility to see that the law is enforced. I have no power to do that. I only have the power to bring information to you, and it's your responsibility to implement it. That's a change for me. Why do I come here? Because I learn things that I never knew before. See this little gizmo around my neck? That's a neck loop for my hearing aids. Never heard of it before until the last meeting when I came here. I bought my own. This is mine. Yes, this is important. I will need
Please
to finish.
conclude your
because
remarks.
You've taught me things that I brought back to my temple. I just bought 3 of these so that people with my hearing or hearing aids can hear. I
Please
have
conclude
never
your remarks.
heard. I understand what you're saying. I also know that because they're a councilman, the clock stopped. I'm not a councilman. I'm a citizen. I have as much right to speak here as they do. And when you be fair,
Mr. Bowden, thank
I
you
heard
for your
what you
remarks.
said.
Please
You
conclude your remarks.
yes, I'm completing.
The next speaker is Ellen Shannon, followed by Josh Nakowitz.
I'm going to interrupt for 1 second. We do need to be consistent. So folks will speak for 2 minutes, and we're going to have to be consistent on that. We don't show anyone special treatment, not in a public hearing. Thanks.
Good morning. I'm Ellen Shannon, speaking on behalf of the New York City Transit Riders Council. We would like to express our appreciation on behalf of the riders we represent for the value and significant momentum that the Subway Action Plan, Fast Forward, and the Save Safe Seconds programs have had on the system's performance. We thank Governor Cuomo for putting the strongest global transit leader in place in New York City Transit. Andy Byford has energized his staff, harnessed the confidence of riders and beyond, and he and his team have created a vision for the future in the Fast Forward program, the vision that riders want. Weekday train delays are down 46% from a year ago. line run times are shortening. But we also want to express serious concern with several elements of the reorganization plan, which will jeopardize that momentum and the system's resiliency by splitting it apart and having it serve two bosses. During last Friday's outage, Andy and his team quickly worked to troubleshoot and ensure the safety of riders. His team methodically identified the nature of the problem and returned service as soon as possible. Had the system been split apart, which the reorganization proposes, separating operations planning, engineering, capital program management, and possibly buses from subways, we question if service would have returned to normal when it did. Removing these departments to work not just for a different leader, but to an entirely different reporting structure that ends at the board, who do not have subject matter expertise on our complex and nearly 115-year-old system. We are
Please
deeply
conclude your
concerned
remarks.
that this change will have a direct and negative impact on the riders. Friday's outage, as difficult as it was, could have been much worse if it had been siloed instead of one
Please
system.
conclude your remarks.
Please keep this in mind when you vote on Wednesday. Thank you.
The next speaker is Josh Nakowitz, followed by Despina Costales on behalf of Senator Gianardis.
Good morning. My name is Josh Nakowitz. I am the Senior Vice President for Economic Development at the Alliance for Downtown New York. We are the Business Improvement District representing Lower Manhattan. I'm here today to speak in support of the New York Stock Exchange's request to close the two J and Z subway entrances at the intersection of Broad Street and Wall Street. In the wake of the September 11th terrorist attacks, the New York Police Department implemented a variety of security measures in the area around the Stock Exchange. Those included closing the two entrances to the J and Z train at the southwest corner of Broad and Wall Street. They've been closed for over a decade, and it is our understanding that the police department has no intention of reopening them to public access anytime in the foreseeable future. The current method for closing these two subway entrances is makeshift. It's cluttered. It is an eyesore in the community, and it detracts from what should be a centerpiece public space in New York City that currently attracts millions and millions of visitors every year. Over the last several years, the Downtown Alliance has worked closely with a group of community stakeholders, including Community Board 1, the police department, local elected officials, local residents around the Stock Exchange to develop a new vision for what that public realm can look like and what that streetscape can look like in the future to transform that area into an inviting, 21st century friendly and attractive public space. And we feel that closing these two subway entrances will allow us, in partnership with the New York Stock Exchange, to realize critical elements of that vision. We strongly support this action and hope the board takes action today. Thank you.
The next speaker is Despina Costales, followed by Eddie Mark.
Good morning. First of all, I'd like to thank Andy Byford, Pat Foy, and everyone at the MTA proposing the F Express train. By adding these express trains, which will hopefully become more frequent, you will finally be acknowledging the daily difficulties of Southern Brooklyn residents. As the program is implemented, it is my belief that the ripple effects to other neighborhoods will be understood to be minimal, and additional express trains can be added. These trains will substantively ease the burden of Southern Brooklyn residents, many of whom have some of the longest commutes in the city. Commuting to Manhattan from the ends of the line takes over an hour, with a range of unpredictability that is unacceptable. F local train service has improved since the Fast Forward plan began. Now it is time to give that relief to commuters from the end of the line. We need to work to ensure that every community with seriously long commute times gains access to express service. That's why I'd also like to mention another agenda before you, the proposed cutback in the evening R train service. While I commend the work being done to alleviate the commute times for those that live and work along the F line, our office was disappointed to hear that the NYC Transit plans to cut back R train service. Evening commute times along the R train have already been worsening. Eliminating one round-trip evening R train service during rush hour will only make the trains more congested, causing additional delays for those of us who travel the R train daily. Subway riders looking for relief to their already unpredictable and long evening commutes. Lastly, I'd like to bring your attention to the incident along the R train. Service in Bay Ridge was suspended, and there were no announcements to passengers waiting for the train. The lack of communication is unacceptable and only further chips away at the trust and faith in the system of riders. It's hard to show that service is getting better and that the work you are doing is having an effect when these things happen, and they happen on a daily basis. No one is going
Please
to believe
conclude
their
your
commutes
remarks.
have gotten slightly faster when the morning commutes, where they wait 30-plus minutes for trains with no announcement for their evening commute, takes double the time it should. Thank you.
The next speaker is Eddie Mark, followed by Alexandra Silversmith.
Good morning, Andy and the board here. My name is Eddie Mark, and I am the district manager for Community Board 13 down in Coney Island, Brighton Beach, Gravesend, and Seagate. I also use the F train line, and for me, commuting on it, it takes between at least 45 minutes to an hour just to get to downtown Brooklyn. And to have this F Limited Express would make a big difference for our commute down there. We represent over at least 100,000 residents down in Coney Island and southern Brooklyn. We realize that with this improvement, gives us a better step in the right direction. We also realize that within the last 10 years, the G train was extended from Bergen Street to Church Avenue. That was a need that had to be addressed. I think something like this, where we realize that this limited F Express should be extended over to 18th Avenue, to Kings Highway, and even down to Stillwell Avenue. I think something like this is needed for the community, and this would be beneficial for everyone at large. Thank you.
The next speaker is Alexandra Silversmith, followed by Evan Dolan.
Good morning. I am the Executive Director of the Alliance for Coney Island, and I'm here today representing the businesses and residents of Coney Island. As the Alliance, in 2017, we collected thousands of signatures from residents and businesses calling for the restoration of F Express service. This service is crucial for Southern Brooklyn, as you have heard, which is facing some of the largest commute times in New York City. 2 trains in the morning and 2 trains in the evening are not enough, but I know that's not necessarily what we are here today to discuss. And we're in favor of the F Express restoration for 3 reasons. One is to fix a broken promise. F Express was taken away in 1987 for construction reasons and then never reinstated. In the past 30 years, residents have had to face some of the longest commute times in the city. Second, there are immediate results at almost no cost. We can restore the F Express service without requiring additional cars, track capacity, or resources. This time saved for commuters will have an immediate impact. Third, this will stimulate a growing residential and tourist destination, which is in Coney Island. Every year we have over 7 million visitors in Coney Island, and our residential population is growing. We have over 1,000 units of housing under development as we speak. Coney Island lacks many of the similar options for destinations with express service, so we can boost a growing economy by restoring F Express. We're very happy about the news, and we think it's a long overdue solution to the transportation hurdles that residents face. I hope this is the first of many measures instilled to help support the residential and business community in being better connected to employment and educational resources and help grow visitorship to our iconic neighborhood. Thank you.
The next speaker is Evan Dolan, followed by H.P. Schroer.
Good morning to the board. About a month ago, I finished up a year-long project into urban planning. I created, as part of this project, a basic plan for BRT, or select bus service, between South Ferry and 34th Street in Manhattan, with 7 intermediate stops along the West Side Highway. This project was a year-long multi-step project into a field we were interested in. I wanted to share my work with the MTA board. Now, I do not expect this to go anywhere, but hopefully it can spark some thoughts surrounding the future of select bus service in Manhattan. I have to slip out, but there is contact info on the back of this packet with some of the work that I did that I would like to share with the board. Thank you.
The next speaker is H.P. Schroer, followed by Sandra Pajaro.
Good morning. It was my intention to introduce myself to new members of the board at June's meeting, but unfortunately I could not attend it. My name is H.P. Schroer, a veteran of World War II, and the director of a self-funded veterans advocacy organization called UMIWI. Our mission is to obtain the right for all veterans to purchase MetroCards and the Long Island Railroad and Metro-North tickets at the same price as seniors. We want to thank your chairman, Pat Foy, for his support and his active role to make a veterans discount a reality. And to the many of you and to Andy who have also supported this issue. The mayor and the New York City Council last year approved funding half-price MetroCards for veterans attending college in the city. This is the first time in over 100 years, very much since the establishment of a New York transit system, that veterans will receive a discount. This was to start in January, but has been postponed till fall. Our campaign is a veteran service and sacrifice for country worth 2 cents, is supported by the public as well as a majority of the legislature. We are happy to work with you and to answer any questions to make a veterans discount a reality. I thank you.
The next speaker is Sandra Pajero, followed by Kevin Zhang.
Good morning. I'm here to speak about Accessoride, my experience with Accessoride and the eHealth same-day program. Approximately 2 years ago, I lost my eyesight and I thought that I would be homebound. I called my supervisor and we discussed reasonable accommodations, and I decided to continue being a productive member of society and go back to work. I relied on Accessoride to get me to work on time on a daily basis, and I soon came to find out that that was not a reality. I got to work late about 2 times per week. Quite disappointing. My supervisor pulled me to the side and she expressed disappointment in the fact that I could not get to work on time. I was embarrassed because after receiving reasonable accommodations, I could not even get to work on time. I was advised by Accessoride to try to book my trips 2.5 hours prior to my start time at work, which I thought was a little bit far-fetched since my longest commute was about 40 minutes away from work. But I did as instructed, and what I found out was that I still was not able to get to work on time, and now I had the added bonus of having to ride with other riders and watch them get picked up and dropped off at their destinations prior to me getting to work, and I was still getting to work on time. My commute home was the same exact story. In November of 2017, I became part of the eHealth same-day program, and I want to say that I am happy to report I have not been to late work once since that time. I am able to book my trips in advance or on the same day, and have a car pick me up reliably and get me to work on time, which is really, really important. As an individual with a very visible disability, my likelihood of being employed or employable is not as great because of my disability. Unfortunate to say, but it is true. I cannot afford to lose my job because Accessoride cannot get me to work on time. So I ask the board to please consider fixing any glitches that the eHealth program same-day service has so that it can continue beyond its proposed end date of the pilot program on December 31st, 2019. Thank you for your time.
The next speaker is Kevin Zhang, followed by Pedro Valdez Rivera.
Hello, good morning to Sarah Finberg and Andy Byford. My name is Kevin Zhang. I want to request that the full F Express train in Brooklyn and Bergen Street lower level station restore, because F Express train will only have 2 trips for AM rush hour on Manhattan-bound F Express train from Church Avenue to J Street Metrotech, and 2 trips for PM rush hour on Coney Island-bound F Express train from J Street Metrotech to Church Avenue. F Express train will not stop at Bergen Street lower level station. Bergen Street lower level station is still closed. F local train is only stop at Bergen Street upper level station. Bergen Street station needs to be renovated on the upper level and the lower level in both directions. F express train will be at stops on the Bergen Street lower level station. F train will be running express stop at Bergen Street, 7th Avenue, and Church Avenue in both directions on rush hours, middays, evenings, and weekends. F train will be running express between Kings Highway and Church Avenue in peak directions on AM rush hours for Manhattan-bound F train and PM rush hours for Coney Island-bound F train. F local train will continue to operate between Bergen Street and Kings Highway for originates and terminates at Kings Highway in both directions during rush hours only. And also, I'm very excited to ride the F Express train during rush hours in September 2019, but it needs to run more F Express train trips during rush hours, middays, evenings, and weekends. Thank you and have a nice day.
The next speaker is Pedro Valdez Rivera, followed by Lenny Mark, representing Assemblymember Simbrowitz.
Good morning. My name is Pedro Valdez Rivera. I'm a member of the Alliance since 2013, and I live in a NYCHT building in Bed-Stuy since 2016. Couple of things I want to talk about on this agenda today. One is on the B38 bus. I normally take the B38 bus on a few occasions, from my house all the way to downtown Brooklyn and back for doctor's appointments. And trust me, during any time of the day, especially rush hours, especially during midday hours, there's some bus bunchy at the majority of the time, and there's a lot of overcrowding. I'm waiting with several other people, waiting for the B38 bus, wait for 15 to 20 minutes, and wait for those standard 44 buses, which as a result, it's going to be more overcrowded when they enter the bus. As a result, people cannot wait much longer. They go to the back of the bus. So it's a great thing starting this fall that the B38 standard buses will become articulate buses. It's more reliable. There's a lot more people to sit, a lot more seats, and there'll be more reliable service for the 38. And I'm pushing it for the past several months to make it articulate buses for the B38. And I'm proud for Andy Byford and the NYCT for making this happen. The second thing is the Save Seconds program, which is very helpful. I'd like to thank Andy Byford and his team for that, especially while riding on a J on a few occasions from Murray Avenue to Royal Manhattan, increasing speeds, making a faster, quicker service. It gets to my meetings on time and is really punctual. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak.
The next speaker is Lenny Mark, followed by Alex Gershman, representing Councilmember Deutsch.
Good morning. My name is Lenny Mark, Chief of Staff to Assemblyman Steven Simbrowitz. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. The Assemblyman regrets who couldn't be here in person to offer his support for the F-Train Express restoration, but asked me to read from a statement. One moment. The people of southern Brooklyn have been living without express service on the F line for a long time, not just years, but decades. In the 1980s, when it first eliminated the express F service, the MTA operated under the misguided belief that the best way to address a budget shortfall was to discourage people from riding the subway. At least that's how it appeared to those who were inconvenienced by these cuts. But southern Brooklyn F-train riders didn't stop riding the subway. Instead, they began to endure longer, more hellish commutes that added entire days each year to their travel time. Eventually, they became angry, and rightfully so, because the express service that was taken from them was never returned. After studies, repairs, and improvements to other lines, the MTA failed MTA failed to live up to its promise to restore Express F service in southern Brooklyn. Over time, what started out as a simple, if unwise, cost-cutting measure became a deeply entrenched and intentional snub to southern Brooklyn strap hangers. At this point, you can't really blame them if their patience is worn thin. Restoring F Express service north of Church Avenue, even in this limited capacity, will save F train riders in southern Brooklyn about an hour each week or a little over 2 days each year. That won't make up for the extra time added to their daily commutes for the last 30 years, but it will begin to restore some degree of trust in the entity that wronged them so long ago. The people of my community deserve an MTA that listens to their concerns and keeps its promises. They deserve an MTA that doesn't seek to repair its budgetary shortfalls by victimizing those strap hangers with the longest subway commutes in the city. On behalf of my community, I ask that you ease the lives of Southern Brooklyn F train riders and finally implement rush hour express service. Thank you very much.
The next speaker is Alex Gershman, followed by Josephine Marunik.
Good morning, MTA Transit Committee. My name is Alex Gershman, Transportation Coordinator for the 48th City Council District, and I'm speaking on behalf of Councilman Chaim Deutsch. I'm here to express my gratitude to the MTA for its decision to finally reinstitute an F Express train. I'm pleased that the MTA has recognized the importance of running faster trains to assist folks with some of the longest commutes in New York City. For residents with shorter commutes, having a reduction in travel times is a luxury. For those of us living in southern Brooklyn with commutes approaching an hour or longer, a reduction in travel times is a necessity. I want to repeat that. For residents with shorter commutes, having a reduction in travel times is a luxury. For those of us living in southern Brooklyn with commutes approaching an hour or longer, a reduction in travel times is a necessity. My constituents commute from the next to last stop on the F line, West 8th Street, New York Aquarium, to the stop before that, Neptune Avenue. In addition to enduring nearly 20 local stops in Brooklyn, the F then runs local in Manhattan as well. Due to the length of these commutes, southern Brooklynites' houses lag in value, they're unable to take certain jobs, and their quality of life suffers. The addition of limited rush hour peak direction express trains is a good start to improving service and quality of life for South Brooklynites. Residents of my district and southern Brooklyn as a whole will greatly benefit from this positive change. For this, my constituents and I are grateful to the MTA and especially President Andy Byford. We look forward to more improvements and efficiencies to make service faster and more reliable in a safe and effective manner, as well as accessible to everyone. Thank you.
Our next and final speaker is Josephine Marunik.
Good morning. My name is Josephine Marunik, and I live at the Lower East Side of Manhattan in Alphabet City between A and B. And it's in reference to the select buses that you decided that's going to be stops every 4 of 10 blocks. And it's very difficult for me and extremely painful walking the extra blocks where normally I live on 3rd Street. And when I get to 3rd Street Avenue A, I would just have to make a right turn and the Avenue A bus would stop there. Now I have to walk 2.5 blocks to Houston Street, which is extremely painful. And never mind how long I might have to wait for it, there's no place to sit. And occasionally I have to go to Rivington Street in Essex, and they don't stop anywhere near there. Please bring back the local. If you want to keep the select, fine, but please bring back the local for people like myself, other seniors, and other disabled people. Not everyone that's disabled have or need to use those motorized chairs, but we still have difficulty walking and painful, and we still need to do things for ourselves. I know I enjoy doing things for myself. So please bring back the local bus. You could keep the select, but bring back the local. And also in reference to the Accessoride. Last week I needed to call for them. I told them my appointment was for 1 o'clock. I didn't get there until 5 to 2. At the time when I was needed to be at the appointment, they were at the Washington Bridge. George Washington Bridge, picking up someone else. They have to have, when you call in reference to the problem, they says, well, if you want to take a cab, take a cab. We could give you, I said, but I don't have enough money on me. And they'll say, well, then they don't say it, but more or less
Please
their
conclude
attitude,
your
that's your
remarks.
problem. Please adjust the boat's problems. We, even though we're disabled,
Please
we still
conclude
like
your
to be
remarks.
independent. Thank you for listening.
Thank you to our speakers. Madam Chair, that concludes the public comment.
Okay, thank you to our speakers. So next up is the president's report, but President Byford, we went back and forth quite a bit this morning. So why don't, if you don't mind me suggesting this, why don't you go to elements of your president's report that we did not already discuss this morning, or if there's anything new, any developments or anything else that's in your president's report. Oh.
There are some changes to the minutes if you wanted to do that before you did the other.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's why I shouldn't do the agenda from memory. Sure. So we can go to, okay, you have changes to the minutes, Commissioner Albert?
Thanks. On page 9, it says implement CBTC on the culvert when it should say culver, obviously. And on the same page, when it's referring to my remarks about Kingston Station, it was not about service changes. It was about the service that runs overnight is not reflected on the service on the station entrance. There is no 4 on the station entrance, just a 3. And finally, on page 16, there is a committee referred to as CPAQ when I think it meant CPAC.
Okay, sure. Any other changes to the minutes?
It's just I had
Commissioner
a
Lynn?
second N to my name.
That's true.
But it's spelled correctly.
Fair enough. Okay, sounds good. Any other changes to the minutes? Can I have a motion to approve the minutes? Second? All in favor? Thank you. Are there changes to the work plan?
No, Chair, there are no changes.
Thank you. And with that, let's go to the president's report.
Thank you, Chair. I'll keep it really brief, and I'll then let my SVPs talk about their specific areas, and obviously if board members have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. So first up, as ever, thank you very much to the members of the public. Thank you for your candor, your honest feedback, those that raise specific issues, specific concerns about individual journeys. We will absolutely follow up on those, and I'm thinking in particular of Ms. Marunek in that final testimony. We need to look into that, and we'll certainly do that. I think I'll just limit my comments, Chair, that most of what I would have said has already been covered in terms of the high points and the low points of the last month. Just other than to say, it's great to hear from the floor people recognizing the benefits of Fast Forward, of the Subway Action Plan, and of our Safe Seconds campaign. That's certainly been a driving force behind the renaissance of the subway in terms of an 81.5% punctuality figure. Subway Action Plan and Safe Seconds working together. Very much grateful to our union partners for the assistance they've given to us from the start. I'm really proud also of what Alex and his team have been doing over the last year and a half to address accessibility, and Alex being our first ever accessibility advisor, I think has made a huge difference in just over a year. That plus the work that Craig is doing, we're making progress now on combining our bus plan with that of the city to truly come up with a corridor by corridor and ultimately overall bus master plan that I'm very confident will, over next months and years, see a complete renaissance also of our bus network. Equally important, buses and subways both improving over time.
Okay, any questions for President Byford?
Now that, and congrats again on inching the on-time performance up to 81 point whatever it was, which is 5, which is wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Is there one particular aspect of Safe Seconds or the Subway Action Plan or Fast Forward that you can identify as the lead that makes these kinds of numbers possible, or is it a combination of all 3, or?
Well, I'd certainly say what was needed was the Subway Action Plan, which has eliminated or drastically cut major incidents, because what the Subway Action Plan was doing was fixing things. And absolutely, the fact that we see less or fewer major incidents now is down to the fact that we have been addressing those basic housekeeping items, if you will, clearing drains, installing continuously welded rail, addressing rolling stock reliability, adding people to respond better to medical incidents. But what was also needed was the discipline, the operating discipline that Save Seconds brought, because you can cut out major incidents. That doesn't in itself speed up the service. What has speeded up the service, and we're going to put up some charts to show the improvements that have been made. What has made the real difference there is all out focusing on basic railway operations. So that means getting your scheduled run times right. It means getting your start times off termini right. In other words, as soon as that signal comes off, the train's got to go. Let's go. It means getting your dwell times right at stations. It means removing redundant speed restrictions. Speed restrictions no longer necessary, and we've removed many speed restrictions. Now, we heard one of the members of the public talked about a faster, you sir, thank you, appreciate that, the faster J service, because we've taken off speed restrictions that just weren't necessary. And critically, we have been methodically working our way around identifying signals that were wrongly calibrated in conjunction with our union partners and frontline train operators who've told us where to look. And I'm very proud of that. I'm proud of the fact that we have taken material action to speed up the service. So I think Save Seconds and SAP in conjunction is a winning combination, and the 81.5% for which Sally and her team should take credit is testimony to that.
Any other questions? Okay, so let's turn to our other reports, and just if, we're already an hour and a half in, so if folks can keep it brief, that would be great. We want to preserve time for committee members to ask questions. Sally?
Good morning. I would like to just open up reiterating the comments that Andy made earlier with respect to the staff, the thousands of Subway's employees who have been out over the past week doing tremendous amounts of work in the system, work that would have been scheduled and continued without the heat wave, like elevated track panel installation and lots of construction and maintenance throughout the system. All of that continued. But also the additional efforts with respect to mitigating the heat impacts, making sure our comm rooms were functional, making sure our substations were uninterrupted, making sure that our track and signal components that were exposed to the heat were constantly monitored. So a huge thank you to the Subways team for their efforts in very difficult conditions. On to performance. I am pleased to report that the weekday on-time performance for the month of June was 81.5%, which is record-breaking for us in many ways. It's the first time that on-time performance for weekdays in the system has been above 80% in nearly 6 years. It is the highest on-time performance since August of 2013. Delays dropped, as we heard earlier, by nearly half to the lowest level since September of 2013. This was the 10th consecutive month that we met our delay reduction target, the 3rd consecutive month that we met our escalated delay reduction target of 18,000 delays per month. Weekday major incidents, as Andy mentioned, decreased by 27% year over year and matched the lowest number since we began tracking this statistic in January of 15. Customer journey time performance improved to 84.3%. That's the highest that measure has been since we started tracking it 4.5 years ago. Additional train time improved by 33% compared to last year. That is the best level that it has reached since we began tracking it 4.5 years ago. Subway car MDBF reached nearly 137,000 miles. That's a close to 12% improvement year over year. I would like to, as Andy mentioned, direct your attention to the screen where we're showing a graph of the percent change in median runtime, or I should say the percent improvement in median run times. So the black bars represent a percent reduction in run times. Run times are the time it takes our trains to move from terminal to terminal. A black line on this bar represents an improvement, meaning trains are moving faster, run times are getting shorter. So this is the month of May of 2019 versus 2018. And what you can see is that there's a lot of black on the page. Certainly the 7 line is ahead of the pack with the biggest percent increase, and that reflects the introduction of full automatic train operation and CBTC on the line. Overall, the A division was 4% improved in terms of run times for the month, and the B division 2%. The one red line on this page represents the N line and largely reflects the general order that was put into effect along 4th Avenue between 18 and 19, and that N train for a portion of 4th Avenue is running local in 19 compared to 18. This is the distribution for June. So again, we see a lot of black on the screen. The A division slightly higher with 4.4% improvement. The B division slightly lower with 1.6% improvement. We do see declines on the C line and the L line, and we're working with that data to better understand whether that's the impact of major incidents that occurred during the peak hours. These are all peak period run times. Or whether they reflect something that happened in the operating environment in the month of June. So those analyses are underway. Overall, we're very encouraged by the progress that we're seeing here. We think it represents, as Andy mentioned, a whole host of comprehensive efforts that are underway with the Subway Action Plan, with Save Seconds throughout subways, and are delivering real-time benefit, near-term benefit for our customers. So we know that we have more to do, and we look forward to continuing this progress. This concludes my operating report.
Thank you. Any questions for Sally? Mr. Schwartz?
Sally, thank you very much. Obviously, it's always good news to see improvements being made in terms of performance, and I also want to thank the board members who've supported implementing performance metrics that, in working with both New York City Transit, Long Island Railroad, and Metro North, I think it's helpful in terms of our ability to monitor and track progress. At some point in the near future, I would like both from New York City Transit as well as the commuter rail to kind of get a sense from you on what you think the optimum metric is going to be. I mean, there's a limit in terms of where you can go, even if everything is perfect or runs perfectly in terms of on-time performance, major incidents, minor incidents, another, et cetera. And I'd like at some point here over the next couple of months to kind of get a sense that if everything was running perfectly all the time, what would be the expectation as a way for the board to be able to kind of track against what we're doing now versus a best case scenario.
We can certainly have that discussion. The chart that's included in your book at the end of the operating report shows our delays by category, which gives you some indication of the delays that are associated with asset failures, assets that we maintain, and other incidents that have external influences, things like somebody unauthorized on the tracks or weather event. So that gives you some indication of the magnitude of the things that are easier for us to control, but we can certainly translate that into targets that show that detail more specifically.
If I might just add to that, I think there is a point at which you get diminishing returns from the work we're doing with the existing, within the limitations, if you will, of the existing signaling system and the existing infrastructure. Now, having said that, we're not going to, to just concede that. We are pushing all out to continue to drive these statistics up. I've said to Sally, although she've killed me for saying so again publicly, I really want to get to 85% before we've even re-signaled or done any more re-signaling. But I believe that the way we're going about this with the various programs we have, the focus on basics we have, there's a bit more to squeeze out of this. But you know what I'm going to say. What's really needed is that all-out absolute re-signaling of the subway, and certainly the CBTC programs we've got going at the moment on QBL, Culver about to start 8th Avenue. I'm very excited about. That will make all the difference.
Any other questions for Sally? Okay, thanks, Sally. I want to turn to buses. One quick comment at the top of buses. Craig, I want to congratulate you and thank you for your work. 2 months ago and again last month, we talked about the importance of trying to speed up the enforcement of bus lane violations. And at one point, I think that it wasn't going to be until the end of January that we were going to have the equipment on our pilot program buses to be able to do the automatic enforcement, the automatic ticketing of the bus lane violators. But you went back to the vendor and got them to move up and move more quickly and to drop other work, I believe, and execute on those buses. And we're now going to be, and I'll have you comment on this, but I believe by the end of November, we will have all 3 pilots executing. And then, of course, we'll be able to issue tickets, issue violations, get those paid. We'll have fewer violations, I believe, because we'll be ticketing, and hopefully we can start executing on additional bus lanes once we're enforcing the ones we've got.
Yes.
Go ahead, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so just to reiterate basically what you said, at your urging and with Andy's urging and support, we went back this past month. We met with the vendor, we met with our technical team, and we came together, we took a look at some existing challenges, and based upon that work, we were able to get a written commitment from the vendor where we'll go live next month in August with our first route. It'll be the M15. And then followed by the next 2 routes, which is the Brooklyn, and then the M14, which, as we know, is currently has a temporary restraining order, but we're hopeful that will get lifted. So by the end of November, we'll have all 3 routes active with bus lane enforcement. We're excited about that. So thank you. Thank you for your support. I think in the interest of time, I'll also do an abridged bus update.
Go for it.
Okay. What I'd like to share with the committee is that this month, not this month, I'm sorry, August is our 1-year anniversary of the Staten Island Express Bus Network. And the Express Bus Network is showing consistent and sustained improvements. I just want to share a couple of statistics with the committee today. In June, most notable, Staten Island Express Bus customer journey time improved by 11.4% over last June, and speeds were up by 8.4% again over last June. That's the current SIM network versus the old X network. So that's some really good statistics, and we're looking forward to continuing to build upon those. I'll move on to paratransit now. Ridership continues to grow. May 2019 increased by 9% as compared to May of last year, and performance in May continued to be impacted by the transition from advanced reservation e-hail to our enhanced broker service. Lastly, our 2018 paratransit customer satisfaction survey was published and is now available on the website. I'm happy to report that overall satisfaction with paratransit increased by 12% since 2017. And 53% of AAR users reported that services had improved in the past year, compared to only 36% who said the same in 2017. So that's significant at a 17% increase year over year. I just also want to reiterate what Sally said, thanking the bus team over the past weekend specifically, where, with the extensive heat, rain, and other challenges where, the bus team stepped up to the plate and, supported the subway. So thank you very much, and have a good summer.
Let's move to Alex. I'm sorry, I didn't call for questions. Anybody have any questions for Craig? Okay, let's go to Alex. Thanks.
Sure, thank you so much. So as we've stated, July is Disability Pride Month, and we really had a great day on July 14th with our whole team, including Managing Director Ronnie Hakem, President Byford, myself, and probably over 100 of our transit employees marching in the Disability Pride Parade. It was the largest contingent we've ever had, and it was our 2nd year participating, and it was just a great thing. One last thing that I want to highlight, we're doing our first Disability Awareness Day for our buses and paratransit division this coming Friday, July 26th at the Michael J. Quill Depot, where we'll show accessibility features of our buses, talk about all kinds of different things, and we're hoping for a great event with the community as well as internal employees who are invited. Next, I'd like to highlight that we just a few days ago, we opened up a new ADA station complex at New Utrecht and 62nd Street in Brooklyn. President Byford and myself had the privilege of being there on the first day of it being in service. It really is a major, very, very impressive complex. Incredible how the elevators were just 4 new elevators were kind of fit into into places in the complex that work super well. And this is something we hope to see in the future as we work with many elevated stations and continue to push fast forward in years to come. There are other stations in South Brooklyn that are in construction as well on the R line and other places. And for many constituents of South Brooklyn here in the audience, as you can imagine, with the stated goal of fast forward of being no more than 2 away, South Brooklyn is due for a lot more ADA stations to come, and we certainly hope to deliver on that goal. Lastly, we continue our study of the Stantec study of the remaining inaccessible stations in our system. We're about 255 stations of the way through. We have about 100 stations remaining to get through in the end of the year, and we remain on target for that. And we very much look forward to Q3, Q4 in the fall and the winter of this year. We have some very exciting accessibility updates coming up, things we've been working on over a year, so stay tuned. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Questions? Yep, Commissioner Lacewell.
Thank you. Can you comment on Access-a-Ride? We seem to receive quite a number of complaints, at least in these sessions. And I don't know if that's anecdotal to those individuals or, do we have a significant initiative to improve performance? Can you just comment generally? Thank you.
Absolutely. There's a lot of things going on with our Access-a-Ride service. I think the primary thing to note is that there are 3 major modes of Access-a-Ride service that are happening right now. Primary service, which is our blue and white vans, which provide the dedicated service, which we call. Then there is our enhanced broker service, which is providing service via taxis that we've recently put into place. And then there is an existing pilot for on-demand e-hail service. So on the primary service, which does probably about 50% of our trips, give or take, the blue and white vans, there are several initiatives to improve the service, which is one, new and modern scheduling system. A modern scheduling system which is currently being built out, and we'll start to see some of it coming in later this year, but mostly in 2020, will help us to improve our performance in numerous ways. 1, to schedule trips more efficiently using the best route technology possible. 2, on the day of, when traffic conditions dictate that this is no longer the most optimal route, to have real-time traffic optimization, as well as being much more sophisticated in how we schedule and plan the accessibility needs of our customers. Those who need our dedicated service and buses, how about those who have different accessibility needs that may be able to take taxis and different kinds of things. So some of the complaints that you also hear at times have to do with the transition from our e-hail advanced reservation service to enhanced broker, which happened earlier in March. We have been trying to right-size the service in terms of getting taxi performance by those, which is now FTA compliant, to be what it was before. We have seen an uptick in our on-time performance over the last few months, and we hope to hit similar on-time performance numbers as we get into the fall, closer into the 90 percentiles. So we certainly, it has not been a secret, we'd love to have some more capacity on our taxi service, on our enhanced broker service. We're working with our vendors. Some of them are coming in today to meet with the president as well as myself to really push our enhanced broker vendors to do more and to be able to handle a greater load. Issues and the future of e-hail on demand, as has been discussed by certain customers today, is something that remains on the horizon. There are many internal discussions, some about funding, but some about the service in general, that remain to be determined. So we continue to work and see where we land. We probably have some new metrics coming out in the next few months that will really show how Access-a-Ride service is really doing. It remains a concerted effort of the agency, and we hope with some of the advancements I mentioned, complaints will go down, and hopefully our data and statistics will show it as well.
Commissioner Schwartz?
Yeah, just to kind of echo what Commissioner Lacewell, I think it just would be helpful again from a metric standpoint, if there's, and maybe it's already in the book and I missed it, I didn't see it, and if that's the case, I apologize for asking the question, but to understand, be able to track what the ideal situation would be if in a perfect thing, if everything was running on time in a perfect world, what are the goals and objectives in terms of on-time performance. So whether, regardless of the service or each individual service, where we need to get to. I'm not saying that we won't still have people come and complain about, service, but and obviously it's, there are things sometimes that happen, as Sally pointed out, beyond our control. But I'd like to understand, and I'm sure other board members like to understand, so we can track it and monitor it. What are the optimum or perfect goals and objectives in terms of on-time performance for the customers that need this important service?
Absolutely. If I can just respond briefly. By the time when we meet next in September, I think we'll have some updates on the new metrics we're putting out on the dashboard. If you really, and we'll have something much more detailed, but when you really think about what makes a customer's trip right, is them being picked up on time, them being dropped off on time, and how long they spent from point A to point B, which is what we call ride time. So there are so many different factors that interplay into that, and some of the new metrics will really show, are we hitting all 3 points? Because it's not just about any one of those three. We've been working with Chair Feinberg on those, on some of those data points, and also trying to close our windows so that what we consider optimal is also what our customers consider optimal. So stay tuned for that.
Right, because right now a trip can technically fall within an on-time window and be 29 minutes late on one side and 29 minutes on the other side. So do the math on that, you're 58 minutes off, but you're, quote, on time, which is infuriating. Commissioner Vanderpool.
To briefly add to Alex's comments that there was a board task force meeting on Accessoride, and that task force did take a little bit of a hiatus, but was reconvened last month, and actually a number of board members around the table had participated. So we're looking to continue to engage with the paratransit division and discuss a lot of the issues that are raised during our public comment session, and then discuss some solutions and work through what's being done to address a lot of the concerns we're hearing.
Anyone else? Okay, thanks so much. Sarah Meyer with Strategy and Customer Experience.
Great. So good morning. This month we released Q2 results for our customer count, our quarterly customer satisfaction survey. The full survey is available in the board book. But for subways, service satisfaction increased by 3.8 percentage points to 65.2%. Compared to Q1 2019. So our customers are feeling the effects of the increased service levels that Sally reported on earlier. Satisfaction increased specifically on the F, Q, R, 4, 5, and of course the 7 train. For buses, overall service satisfaction remained at 59.1%. But we made big gains in fare payment, which I hope we can attribute to the release of Omni being available on Staten Island buses. That was increased by 5.7 percentage points. Onboard cleanliness also went up at 1.7 percentage points to 77.8%. We also reported out on the Q2 customer commitment and delivered on 14 initiatives that our customers can see, feel, and hear. We added 301 new buses to the fleet with 574 new information screens. AAR vehicles with 4 or more passengers can now use bus lanes, so we thank the DOT for their partnership on that. Subway speed limits were increased at 59 locations, and we recalibrated 192 signals. We also released the Q3 commitment with 24 new initiatives, and that's available on our website, new.mta.info/customer commitment. These 24 initiatives include things like finishing the structural repair work on the express track in Brooklyn, enabling more reliable service on the N, the D, and the R lines who are still using a single local track. We're also reconfiguring fare areas at 6 subway stations. I know someone mentioned that from the Access Group. It's something that we're really increasingly looking at as a capacity increase. The number of people in New York keep growing and growing, and we need to do more to make sure that our fare areas can accommodate them. We also are hosting more feedback gatherings, especially on street and on bus for our Queens and Bronx network redesign. So stay tuned for information on that. And again, please check out the website for the full list of those commitments. I did want to acknowledge that customer complaints are up this month, and we're diligently following up on resolving root cause. We've been proactively encouraging, as you all know, with our public events and at our board meetings and on social networks for our customers to reach out to us. So we do see our numbers go up, specifically with complaints, but also on commendations as well. So it just shows that we're doing more communications with our customers, which we think are so important. So happy to be hearing from you all and from customers, and keep sending your thoughts with us.
Thank you so much. Any questions for Sarah? Sarah, my guess is you will not be here for the September meeting. So congratulations
Thank
and
you
good
very
luck.
much. Thank you.
We cannot wait to see you when you get back, but take your time, and we'll be excited to see photos.
Appreciate it. We'll share.
And good luck with the heat, my friend.
Thank you.
Hang in there. Okay, let's go to Mr. Deal for the safety report.
Okay, good morning. As requested by, Mr. Albert, last month we reintroduced the detailed fires report, which outlines severity and location of fires. As for our safety statistics, subway customer accidents have shown a decrease when comparing them between the 12 months period on a monthly basis. We're down about 100 in that category. Subway fires, again, declined by 24% when comparing the most recent 12-month rolling period. Out of those fires, 85% were considered low in severity and 15% were considered average. Just to give you an idea, we're down about 252 fires as opposed to last year. Again, I constantly tip my hat to subways. We're really between the vacuum trains and the portable vacuums. It's really making a difference in our fires. Bus collisions were relatively flat. Collision injuries decreased. However, bus customer accidents continue to show an increase. Employee lost times have shown a slight increase when comparing them between the 12-month periods. We're up about 104, I believe. And lastly, we are making steady progress on our leading indicator goals, and this will complete the safety report. If there's any questions.
I had a question on the employee lost time incidents. Can you address what you're doing to bring those numbers down, please?
Right. We're actually looking at a couple of different things with there. We seem to be very high in our injury on duty, all right? And that's between assaults and harassments. Even though we categorize assaults in the penal law definition, it kind of gets brought into one category of assaults, which is harassments and assaults. So we're working on a couple of things with that to try to, I guess you would say, limit that. We also have an issue with witness of suicides. That seems to be up also this year so far. So, and that's something when someone jumps in front of a train.
The suicide numbers are up, or the
Yes. Well, our contacts with individuals is up also.
contacts with individuals?
Yes.
Okay. And the harassment and assault injuries and lost time incidents, those are those higher than your typical
They're-
lost
yes.
time incidents, which would be falls and sprains and strains?
Yes, they are.
Okay, harassment and assault injuries
It's two.
are now higher than sprains, strains, falls?
No.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
okay.
I'm thinking backwards. Sorry about that.
Okay, that's okay. Okay, I just wanted to make sure I understood you.
Yeah.
Questions for Mr. Deal, Commissioner Albert?
Thank you for the detail on the fires.
You're
It's
welcome.
really, really helpful. As expected, debris is the #1 cause. Is that being
Yes, it is.
addressed with the new portable vacuum units, or do we need to do something else?
No, I think the portable vacuum units are actually working very well. Vacuum trained. It's just getting stuff off the right of way. That's the main thing.
Is that
Stations
stuff
also
that
has.
has blown on the right-of-way, or stuff that passengers have thrown on the right-of-way?
We're not really sure if it's thrown or actually blown on. There's always that possibility. Someone drops something in the station, train comes through, you have that piston effect.
Yeah.
And once that happens, things could be drawn onto it.
Right.
So again, I think it really depends on the follow-up of what's being done to make sure the track areas are clear.
Have you noticed a correlation between where we have removed, say, newsstands and the amount of debris in a station?
We have made no correlation with that as of now. We can look at it, but we have made no correlation.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll just add, Commissioner Albert, that the debris has been the biggest category of track fires for some time. And it is the one that we were very targeted on for our approach with Subway Action Plan, where we reconfigured our track cleaning program to get to station tracks more often. Also, with our additional efforts to keep stations clean, we're addressing the trash from getting from the platform to the track. With the introduction of the portable vacuums, the newly configured track schedule, and now the 3 high-powered vacuum trains that are moving through the system, we are making excellent progress in removing more debris from the system and bringing those fires down.
Next safety issue, the netting, the issue that we're dealing with falling debris, and perhaps Andy's best place or Pat Warren's best place to answer this question, but an update on where we are in that would be
Sure. Okay, thank you. Very topical, because we are starting work today, actually getting ready to mobilize at 4 locations where we are trialing a netting solution to arrest anything that falls off from the elevated sections. We've engaged a couple of contractors. We've used one of our facilities up in the Bronx, where we do actually have a piece of elevated structure that we use for training purposes. So we've used that elevated structure to test the installation of type of netting. And the balance you've got to get right here is netting that is robust enough to catch something were it to fall from the track, but also that still enables inspection crews to be able to still inspect from underneath, because what you don't want to have to do is each time you want to do an inspection, take all the netting down. So we've been working hard to get that balance right. There are 4 locations, one on the 7 line, one on the Astoria line, one on the Jamaica line, and one on the 1 line. Where we will be installing this netting to do an active trial to see how it copes and what reaction we get, and that will be protection against debris falling down. Having said that, it's not all about mitigation. We're trying to cut it out happening in the first place. So Sally's team have been continuing to do extensive inspections. We've been really paying attention to housekeeping to make sure that residual items from, say, track work aren't left on the elevated structure where they might then fall down. We've been checking ties and clips and also bolts and other paraphernalia that could fall. So this is something that we're paying very close attention to. If this trial proves to be a success, then we'll need to put together a business case to do what's ultimately 60 lines of elevated structure. Maybe we don't have to do all of it, but the good news is we're now ready to go with the trial.
Is there an update? The Wall Street Journal reported at some point a few weeks ago that the most recent incident of falling debris seemed to stem from an inspection that missed, or an inspection that was skipped, or some inspection that missed what should have been caught, which I believe was a piece of tie that came down. Is there an update on that?
So this was, so we have had an investigation into that. This was a piece of degraded wooden tie on a structure that is beneath, where we have a line, that a section of line that comes in from the yard where, so it's not really a main line section of track. It's what we call a put-in track, where the trains come in to provide peak service. And for basically reasons that that should not have happened. There was an inspection done some time back where the track was found to have been degraded. A remedial set of actions was supposed to have happened. That track was supposed to have been repaired. For whatever reasons, the local manager and supervisor didn't action that. Disciplinary action is being taken in order to address that. And that we sent crews out the following weekend, and that track has now been repaired. I remember going down to Brighton Beach to actually watch what they were up to, and we had an army of people in there doing the remedial work. So the track in question has been fixed, and we've closed the loop on why that work wasn't done when it was clearly flagged from an inspection that it should have been done. It was a management and supervisory error. It's not acceptable, and appropriate disciplinary action has been taken.
Okay, great. I'm not an expert on netting. Obviously, if we need the netting, and if the pilot proves we need the netting, then we should keep it. But I don't want us going through the expense of netting because we have inspections that could have caught a problem, but didn't because the inspection was either not done properly or not done promptly. But I assume the pilot program will get
sure.
to that.
So, I mean, the way I'd look at it is prevention's always better than cure. You shouldn't rely on a net to catch something. Stuff shouldn't be dropping in the first place. So that's why I made reference to the other work we've been doing to have an absolute clear up on the elevated structure to make sure that crews are very, very careful. Nothing is to be left that shouldn't be left there. I don't want to see any unofficial structures up there that might cause problems. So we have done a series of inspections across the whole of the elevated structure, and also making sure that we do the inspections properly and that the results are quickly acted upon. Prevention is always better than cure, and that's our philosophy.
Okay, any other questions on safety, Commissioner Albert?
Andy, how frequent is every section of elevated track inspected?
They're supposed to be inspected.
So there's topside inspections, which are done by our track walkers, and they're walking track at least once every week. We also have underside inspections of track components, which are done quarterly, and we have recently instituted a way of capturing those inspections and the points that are identified in those inspections on handheld devices, which we've just rolled out. So now we have our supervisors who are doing those inspections capturing that, so we'll have better diagnostics with respect to compliance and findings. So that's done quarterly. In terms of the structural inspection by our engineering team, that happens once a year.
So inspecting the structure that is holding the tracks is different than inspecting the underside of the tracks, obviously, correct?
Yes. So when our engineering team goes out to look for the structural inspections, they're looking at the structural integrity as they do those. They will identify if there are areas where the steel needs to be repaired, which could also be an area where a piece of steel could potentially come off. So those are the types of issues that our engineering team is looking for when they're out doing their elevated inspections. The underside inspection is specifically of the track components, which can fall from the elevated structure. We have clips and bolts that connect the ties to the steel girders, and that hardware, it is possible for it to come loose. So the netting pilot will do a good job of capturing those types of hardware should they fall, but certainly we want to prevent them from falling in the first place, which is why we've bolstered these inspection procedures and these tracking and management tools for the underside supervisory inspections.
And I'm assuming that if there is a vehicular accident on the street below and any of those vehicles hits one of the beams, that there's an immediate inspection.
Yes, our standard protocol is to inspect.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? All right, let's go to Chief Delatorre.
Good morning, everyone. For the first half of this year, total major felonies in transit are up 0.5% compared to the first half of 2018, a difference of 6 crimes, 1162 versus 1156. There were 13 additional felony assaults, 3 additional robberies, and 12 fewer grand larcenies for the year, a 1.6% decline in these felony thefts. During the month of June, there were 19 additional felony crimes, with 213 versus 194 in June of last year, a 9.8% increase. 41% of the total felonies during the month occurred in Manhattan, 31% in Brooklyn, 13% in the Bronx, and 15% in Queens. As you all know, the theft of copper electrical cable from the subway system not only damages our infrastructure, but can also have an impact on our riders, causing train delays and potentially dangerous electrical issues. I'm pleased to announce that members of our Transit Bureau Special Projects Unit have arrested 57-year-old Prince Hayes, a career criminal who has a long history of damaging our system and disrupting train service. In the latest incident, Hayes was arrested while transporting stolen electrical cable that he recently removed from the subway. Hayes has dozens of prior arrests, including more than 20 arrests related to the theft of subway property or damage to our train system. Hayes is currently on parole and is in custody on $5,000 bail, awaiting his next court date. We suspect Hayes in several thefts and are working closely with the Brooklyn DA's office to prosecute him. Additionally, I also want to highlight a recent apprehension, you may have seen it in the news, of a known recidivist by our District 30 team. Responding to a call of an individual exposing himself at the Court Street station in Brooklyn Heights, our officers encountered 41-year-old James Hunt. After a brief pursuit and having to taser him, since he was resisting, Hunt was taken into custody. He was subsequently tied to another incident of public lewdness at the same station just last month. Hunt is a familiar face to us in the Transit Bureau. He's been arrested over 36 times throughout the past 2 decades for indecent and lewd acts within the subway system. He is currently in custody on $1,000 bail awaiting a court date. With that, I thank you, and I welcome any questions or suggestions you may have.
Thanks. I would love to first go to fare evasion. I know that we don't have comprehensive numbers yet because the implementation of the new approach to fare evasion is just weeks old, and we're still getting some folks up to speed. But I know that it has at least been in place long enough that we should have some anecdotal information, and we should at least know what you're hearing from your officers. And I know Pat Warren is playing a big role in implementing this policy too. So Pat, if you're better placed to answer some of these questions, please come forward. But I would love your initial take on how the fare evasion is going. How the fare evasion approach is going.
So fare evasion, like any other crime, there's no one single answer that's going to resolve it. Everything we do to fight crime in New York helps a little bit, and the cumulative impact is what we hope for in the long run. Regarding fare evasion, the Transit Bureau, I'm just going to give you context first. We consider arrest, tab summonses, which are civil in nature, and criminal court summonses, a total of all types of contacts at the fare array. We have 6,227 for the month of June. That's up over 2,100 from the same month last year. So we are making much more contact with evaders at the turnstiles. I do want to point out that the overwhelming majority, 5,800, are civil summonses. We are working with several pilots in the system. We put alarms on gates. I've sat and spoke to officers who are posting those locations and observing there, and anecdotally, they believe the alarms are working. They've seen a reduction, at least from their eye, as to people evading. We have been working great with Sarah and her team, getting signage up throughout the system and special signage in dedicated stations. I believe they're having an impact as well. We are working, Bobby Deal could probably give you further on it, to get the monitors up. I believe a few are up so far in the pilot stations. No doubt in my mind that's going to have an impact as well. We have to look at the special categories of groups that do commit fare evasion. I break them down myself into 3 groups. Student body that actually have Metro cards, senior citizens that that can avail themselves and often do to the half-price card, but still unfortunately will follow the group through the gate. And then I have the group of people that full fare riders that go through the gate. We need unique ways to address each of these groups. Some groups respond better to warnings than others. We see that when we go to work at a station 3 days in a row. First day we get a large group. Second day we see significant reductions. And the third day even more reductions. The students will comply more once warned, because that's really what we do to the children that have the Metro cards. The seniors will comply more. The adults that are committing fare evasion, we see a modest decrease, but not significant in that group. But there is a decrease. So there's a lot of different things we have to continue to do. Where we post the officers, we've got a lot of officers posted at the turnstiles right now. Obviously, at those turnstiles, we see a huge reduction in fare evasion because the people who are walking up see the officer turn right around and walk away. And maybe they walk to the next stop to find another place where there are no officers. But from my perspective, we need a more meaningful, permanent change in behavior for those who commit fare evasion. Having an officer there alone will give us a temporary remedy. The question is how many of those people will go back to their old ways once the officer is removed. So I think everything's working. Like I say, the cumulative impact, I believe it is working. And as we go forward, hopefully we'll be able to get more specific data to measure the impact that, for each of these pilots and come up with some sort of formula to tell us what's working the most in each category.
Pat.
Just to add that it's very similar on the buses right now, so same reaction from the public, and I will say that it's also in terms of worker safety, which is of course a big part of this. We find that not only the bus drivers, which are very happy to have that kind of protection, so to speak, on the buses, but also getting the same anecdotal remarks from the passengers themselves, saying that they really like the fact that there's some kind of officer police force on the bus, as well as comments like, "This is the first time we've seen that person get on the bus for the last 3 years and they paid." So there's a lot of anecdotal information like that.
Commissioner Glucksman.
Yeah, I want to thank you for your efforts. I see this when I'm riding around the subway. I just wanted to talk about this 173% in Semitic hate crimes.
Yes.
What you can give us about that.
Yes, so the overwhelming majority of these hate crimes are graffiti related. Last month, we actually had a decrease, I think about 17%. We were down from 6 to 5. But even out of that 5, 3 of them were graffiti related. 2 were against the person. When I say against the person, one was an aggravated harassment, so somebody was actually harassing someone in person, and the other one was a grand larceny. We do have an arrest on that grand larceny. That was a case where somebody was specifically making anti-Semitic remarks towards somebody. The victim was videotaping him with his camera, with his phone, and the perpetrator then snatched the phone from him and threw it on the tracks. The phone was recovered. Somebody called the police. Our officers from Transit responded and made the apprehension and arrest. So, of the against the person crimes, we have a significant number of arrests.
Other questions? Okay, thanks very much.
Okay.
All right, let's move to Jai with the finance report.
So in the interest of time, I'd be happy to take questions on the MTA bus and NYCT financial report.
No questions? So to be clear, no questions on bus either? Okay, great. Let's go to the capital program.
Good afternoon. I'll be brief. In June, 8 projects were awarded about $164 million. This includes the flashing line structural painting job, that's 48 to 72nd Street, and the subway, the shop component work at 4 subway maintenance shops. In June, we also completed 11 projects. That includes the facility at East New York, the bus command center, which essentially is going to be equipped by the ongoing project for bus radio system. The 2 in-house truck replacement projects and 1 switch replacement projects in Canarsie Line. Finally, we also completed a 1 station component projects at Astoria Boulevard Station. That concludes the CPM report.
Okay, well, I find myself in the rather unusual position of deputizing for the chair. Does anyone have any questions for Alok Sahar in the capital program? Seeing none. Okay, so we will go to Steve. If you could start up and take us through the procurement items.
Good afternoon. The procurement package representing New York City transit procurement includes 17 actions totaling $53.6 million in expenditures. I'd like to highlight 3 items, which are the modifications to extend state and federally funded indefinite quantity service contracts for asbestos abatement and other environmental remediation services. These contracts were competitively solicited and awarded to the most technically preferred firms and were approved by the board in July 2016 to provide asbestos abatement and other environmental remediation services at various New York City transit facilities on an as-needed basis. Under these contracts, the firms are awarded task orders to provide services involving asbestos abatement, lead disturbance, battery, mercury-containing bulb, and PCB containing fluorescent light fixture ballast removal, as well as other environmental remediation services. Generally, task orders are awarded based on the lowest cost using negotiated price schedules in the contracts. However, sometimes the task orders may be assigned based on the consultant availability and their current workload. The funding for these contracts was depleted more quickly than anticipated due to several unexpected initiatives and emergency projects, including station improvements, emergency signal power upgrades, which was part of the Subway Action Plan, as well as special inspection of elevated structures. These modifications will allow time to solicit, negotiate, and award replacement contracts anticipated in the second quarter of 2020. The modifications extend the contracts by 12 months, increase the aggregate funding across these contracts by approximately $10 million, from $30 to $40 million. All the contractors are performing more than satisfactorily under these contracts and are currently heavily engaged in ongoing projects. These extensions are considered to be in the best interest of New York City Transit. I request your approval of all items in the package.
Any questions for Steve on the package? Okay. Yeah, is there a motion to move the procurement package? Thank you. Is there a second? Okay. In favor? Aye. Okay, thank you. Let's go to service changes, Judy.
Good afternoon. In your book today are 4 service change staff summaries. The first 3 are for information only, and the last one requires board approval. As commented on by several public speakers today, we are proposing to operate limited peak direction F-Express service in Brooklyn between Church Avenue and J Street to speed up the commutes of thousands of customers who use the F-line in southern Brooklyn during the morning and evening rush hours. We are also proposing service span adjustments on the B and W lines and frequency changes on the AC and R lines to facilitate capital and maintenance work. To a large degree, these changes are already in place, but now we'll be implementing them as part of our regular schedules so that it'll be more efficient and less costly for us to provide service while providing more consistent evening and weekend service for our customers. As part of our regular review of bus schedule changes, bus schedules to ensure that service matches ridership demand as well as current operating conditions, we are proposing to adjust service levels on 13 routes, as well as reducing running times on 7 routes and converting 3 routes to articulated buses. Lastly, we are requesting that the board approve to permanently close 2 street stairs at the Broad Street station. One of these stairs has been closed since 2002 and the other since 2012 at the request of NYPD. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Judy, I'm going to make a number of comments, but one is a question. When you say you're recommending F-Express service between Church Avenue and J Street, you're not recommending it south of Church Avenue?
So we looked at running express service south and found that in that case that there wasn't a net travel time benefit, so we're not proposing that.
There's several stops that would be missed, a la the old F-Express, obviously.
It really has to do with
Church
the riders.
Avenue to 18th to Kings Highway without, you know.
It really has to do with the number of riders at the express and local stops, and you don't have the same mix. So that was the reason why there wasn't a net travel time benefit.
Okay, well, I'm already on record as not supporting this particular version of F-Express service. Many things have changed since the last time we ran F-Express service, such as the communities of Windsor Terrace, Red Hook, Carroll Gardens, and Cobble Hill have grown exponentially since we ran that F-Express service. In addition, and as you heard a couple of the speakers comment, we do not have Bergen Street lower level in service, which means going nonstop from 7th Avenue to J Street. That's a lot of missed stations. If you were planning to ride the Express, you likely would wait until it came, and you probably would have had a few locals come prior to that, so any benefit that you would have received would be undone by waiting for 1 or 2 expresses. So I think running it from Church Avenue south, or at least 7th Avenue south, would be of benefit. But skipping all of those stations, to me, I think is a huge mistake. We haven't yet figured out what the increased wait times would be for folks at Bergen, Carroll, Smith, 9th. 4th Avenue and 9th Street is a big interchange point, and that will be bypassed in this proposal. We don't know what on-train crowding will mean for people waiting for the next train. I know there's G service at those stations, but most folks are probably not taking the G. They're waiting for an F. So for those reasons, I would not be in favor of the current proposal for F Express service. I think too many people are bypassed, and I think there's going to be a huge blowback. On the issue of starting the other services earlier to allow for capital work, I'm all in favor of us getting this work done. I just wonder if there is any kind of public commitment that once that work is done, the service would resume the way it was. So basically, those are my comments.
So have you seen the data that Judy mentioned, the south of Church Street data? Okay, do you disagree with it?
Yeah.
The church.
I think there is time to be gained by going from Church Avenue to 18th Avenue nonstop and from 18th Avenue to Kings Highway nonstop. It is a 3-track line, so it would be one-directional express service, which north of Church Avenue can be 2-directional. I get that. But, you know, that's the saving. I also heard some folks from the Coney Island area talk about how long a ride they have. And of course, the D and the N are faster trips to Manhattan from Coney Island than the F ever was, but that's a whole nother issue.
Yeah, I was wondering if there were any other ways to mitigate the impact of this in terms of adding more trains. I assume there's not enough headway to do that. And what is the construction costs of bringing Bergen Street back online?
So we have looked at renovating the lower level of Bergen Street, and the last time we looked at it, it was over $75 million. So it's quite a substantial capital cost. Just to go back in terms of the impact, so the time of these trains in the early morning, actually in southern Brooklyn, folks are taking the train earlier, so the peak hour is earlier than the northern part, even despite the additional running time. So that's why, in terms of the impact, we feel that 52% of the affected riders will benefit from this, and their benefit will be up to 7 minutes on one trip, whereas the impact to the negatively affected riders will see a maximum of an additional 4-minute wait, but on average that will be 1 to 2 minutes. So the net travel time is fairly significant, over 100 hours per day for the riders. So we feel this is a good compromise in terms of improving the commutes for people in southern Brooklyn while minimizing the impact to those at the local stations that you mentioned, Andrew.
And if I might just add to that, thank you, Judy, just to pick up your point, Commissioner Jones, on what I call paths, that we can't mitigate with the impact upon the local trains because we need the paths for express trains, okay? But it is minimal. It's 2 trains in the morning, 2 trains in the evening. And to Andrew, your point, Commissioner Albert, your point about, well, if you're going to let the locals pass in order to wait for the express, would you thereby obviate the improvement you would have had? Not if you do what we think people will do, is target those particular trains. It's a flyer, it's an express. If you miss it, you've missed it, so you've got to get there on time. We're going to pay very close attention to the on-time running of that service and the time at which it emerges from the yard, such that it presents itself at those stations at the right time. So you will target getting onto that particular service in the morning peak to go up to town, and likewise coming back.
In the old incarnation of F Express service, the F Express continued to Coney Island and the F Local ended at Kings Highway. How will you differentiate on the trains themselves, whether it's the Express or the Local?
We'll use a diamond to denote that it is an express, plus we have an extensive comms campaign, which Sarah's team's working on. And there'll be appropriate announcements, obviously.
Any additional questions?
on the commitment to bring back the service on the B and the W, which is ending early due to the obviously capital improvements that are being made?
Well, I don't think we've specifically looked at that, but my view is once work is done, we should be aiming, it's a generic statement, aiming to add more service and to make a better service to attract more people onto public transit. So if once the work is done, there is untapped capacity, as long as we've got the funding, rolling stock, etc., to do it, then absolutely, there's no hidden agenda here, if that's your point.
Sure. And one last thing, which I think you made reference to, but didn't maybe perfectly answer or address, which is if you're at a station such as Smith 9th Street or Carroll Street or Bergen Street, how have you factored how much additional crowd will gather as the express, as you differentiate the express from the local, the time between trains for those folks?
Last duty to deal with the detail, but we, in any service change, we model the likely impact, both the positive and the potential negative. That's standard practice. You would look to see what the crowding on the train would be, but also the crowding on the platform. Is there anything you want to add to that, Judy?
So we did look at train crowding, and we will still be within our loading guidelines. With regard to station crowding, at Bergen Street, at the Warren Street end, there will be an uptick in crowding, but we feel it's manageable. It's only the 2 trips in the morning and the 2 trips in the evening. It's mostly just an evening issue.
Will the times of those expresses be placed in the stations so that folks know when they are likely to arrive?
Absolutely. There's no point in running an express, as particularly a time-bound express, of which there are only 2 in the morning and the evening, if you don't tell people about it. So yeah, we will make sure that that's very clearly understood, because you really do have to turn up on time to get this express.
Right. And in the case of the early ending B and W service, as in London, will you have last W at particular stations so folks know that, and the last B?
Yeah, again, we will make sure that people understand what the change is and what the impact is. If you want to get that last B or W, you must get it at this time for that particular location.
Okay, is there a motion to move the request to permanently close the entrance at the Broad Street JZ station? Second, in favor? Aye. Is there a motion to move service changes? Second? All in favor? Got it. Any standard follow-up reports?
Just to chair the MetroCard report and the quarterly customer satisfaction report, which Sarah previously briefed us on. You can find them in the book.
Any questions on the standard follow-up reports? Any outstanding action items?
Chair, I'm pleased to report we're up to date with outstanding actions.
Any final questions before we adjourn? Anyone? Okay.
Sure. Can you provide us with the penetration of the number of people using the half-price fare fares? I'd be interested. It obviously connects with potential fare evasion issues, but
Sure, absolutely.
also in terms of how well it's rolling out.
Commissioner will be happy to do that.
Is there a motion to adjourn? Second. All in favor? All right. Thanks all.